Hi everyone, hi Doctor. So we are from Group 8 and we are going to present on the topic of development of bond and Sukuk securities. First of all, we are going to introduce you on some of the key terms that were used in the entire project. Firstly, bond security. Bond security is a debt that is borrowed by the issuers, typically private-owned firms and government. In the bond market, there were two types, where the first one is the primary and the second one is secondary market. Moving next, interest rate. Interest rate was impacted by many variables such as GDP and central bank's policy rate, or in the case of Malaysia, we call it as OPR or overnight policy rate. Market interest rate, or sometimes known as yield to maturity, reflects the market participants' judgment on the value of the bond securities. Lastly, Sukuk. Sukuk is different in two distinct ways and is becoming more popular alternative instrument of conventional bond in the financial market in last 2 decades. There are three objectives here. The first one is to observe the relationship between variables and the impact on interest rate and bond in the market. Second is to analyze the proposed model by other researchers. And lastly, to predict on future trend of interest rate, Sukuk, and bond securities.
Now, let's begin on knowing about research designs. It is a research method framework for researchers to collect, measure, and analyze data. So for each category, we have to choose one design from a list to align with our project objectives. And here are the chosen ones. In category 1, we chose correlational design. It is a non-experimental research method which examines the relationship between two variables without any controls from researchers. It is also descriptive, backward-looking, and dynamic in nature. Next, category 2 is on bibliometrics. It is a statistical tool to seek for quantitative and qualitative growth in research topics. Hence, identify research gaps forms a basis in exploring new research areas. Some approaches include citation or co-author analysis. Lastly, category 3 is on experimental computer science. Machine learning is a frequent use case here. Scientific methods are used to control independent variables such as employing various algorithms or parameters, while the dependent variable are the algorithm learning abilities denoted by performance measurements. With all this, our group discovered three relevant articles to further study on the author's usage of research designs. Article in Category 1 emphasizes on demographics and interest rates in Asia. Category 2 emphasizes on bibliometric review of Sukuk literature. And Category 3 emphasizes on machine learning and backtesting for Korean bond markets. So yeah, more interesting stuff ahead. Stay tuned!
Let's proceed to part 2 for category 1. As per the article title, the central question is what is the relationship between demographics and interest rate in Asia. Second, the research design used in this article is correlational research design, while the research method is quantitative research methodology. For the argument of the article, previous research did not look into the impact on Asian country and did not consider the effect of financial integration. Next, the theoretical component for this article is demographic changes will affect financial market and interest rate through the impact on aggregate saving and investment. Intended audience for this article is central bank economist, banker, or investor. The work practice from this article is the authors have separated their article into few sections. First, introduction. Second was on description of trends in long-term real interest rate. Section 3 outlined the empirical model as well as estimation result. And Section 4 concluded with policy implication. The method and unit of measurement used in this article is the author's measure on youth dependency ratio, overage dependency ratio, and aging speed, including economic opponents. There are also control variables. With all these variables, the authors identified the effect on dependent variables of the study, that is 10 years real interest rate. For the explanation of methodology, the authors have clearly documented and explained the main model, which is the formula that they were using. This provides a better understanding to the audience. In this article, the authors use cluster sampling and they focus only on Asian countries. After that, countries were being clustered into open or closed economies. In this article, the authors have collected the data from various sources. The data sample covered the period from 1985 to 2013 and includes 42 economies in the world. The analysis performed including descriptive statistic, correlation metrics, pairwise bivariate plots, panel regression, and panel unit root tests.
Good day, Doctor. For the second category, bibliometrics, the research questions in the paper are what are the influential aspects of the Sukuk literature, what are the key research terms identified, and what are the potential future research questions. The design is meta-literature review. It is a combination of bibliometric citation and content analysis. The authors argued that while the top three countries in publishing Sukuk literature are Malaysia, Saudi Arabia, and USA, there is increasing popularity from researchers in non-Muslim countries. This is pertinent to spur the growth of the untapped Sukuk market. Sukuk has lower risk due to its nature in sustainable investment. Short-term Sukuk yields lower return than higher term. The research insights are intended for policymakers, bankers, investors. It is worth noting from the paper that the primary reason for Sukuk market development in Malaysia is the existence of a favorable legal framework. The three main variables in the research, which are number of articles published, local citations, and global citations, are measured in the unit of frequency. The authors were able to explain the full methodology clearly in one flowchart, despite the complexity from multiple stages. The diagram covers the sampling method, sample filter criteria, and each stage of the bibliometric and content analysis. The research adopted systematic sampling. Keywords used to search the articles are Sukuk, Islamic bond, and Islamic finance. To refine the sample, certain minimum thresholds were then applied. The related articles were sourced from Web of Science in the specified publication period. Two software were used in the statistical analysis. The research consists of three sub-methods in bibliometrics and lastly content analysis.
Next, I'll be explaining on the selected articles for the third category, which is experimental computer science. So for this paper, the central research question is that how is the performance of current treasury bond (KTB) trading strategy by utilizing the best prediction model on bond spread verified by back testing method. The research design for this paper is experimental CS, in which the machine learning algorithms is manipulated followed by performance evaluation. The methodology is quantitative, in which the financial data and the bond spread are the input and output respectively. The main argument is that most studies have mainly focused on stock market instead of the bond market, and the main theoretical component is the mechanism of each ML algorithms. The intended audience for this paper is bond market participants as well as future researchers on related study. There are two main knowledge of work practice. Firstly, it's found that AWS and random forest algorithms are the two best performing models in predicting the 10-3-year KTB spread. Secondly, it's found that the proposed trading strategy could effectively increase the return on investment during backtesting. As for the measurements, during prediction, the main unit being used is the basis point BP for the 1-year spread. As for evaluation, is MAE and PRE in respective unit, and as for backtesting, is RI in percentage. So overall, the author is able to effectively explain each part of the methodology in clear and concise manner. The data sample used is real-world financial data for about 10 years, and they are obtained from Informax database, which is usually utilized by current bond market participants. So subsequently, feature engineering is performed based on domain expert opinion to further generate and select additional features.
Hi Doctor, I'm going to present part 3 of our group project. So here is a summarization table of the limitation of all the articles we have reviewed. In conclusion, we believe that the sample of the articles are a bit too limited into a certain countries or a certain database. So we believe that they can actually expand further into other countries or database and make it more comprehensive into their, for their sample size. For the strength of the articles, in the conclusion, we believe that the writing in the articles are quite clear and also easy to understand for the readers. And some of the article itself are quite comprehensive in terms of the testings for the robustness, and then in terms of the coverage of the qualitative and quantitative aspect, and also the implementation of the modeling to practicality of the model. Next, on the future research questions, we have identified some of the future research questions. For example, for correlational designs, one of the questions is how to capture the effect of demographic transition on the long-term in real interest rate. Next, bibliometrics, the authors actually suggested that the future research question can hinge on, like, are there any differences between issuance of asset-backed and asset-based Sukuk in terms of investor reaction. For experimental computer science, we suggest that we can also study on, are there any statistical significance between KTB in Korea and other government-issued bonds from different countries. Next, on the author credential and interest, all authors in the articles actually demonstrated a knowledge in the scope they are studying. So overall, low chance of biases.
To sum up, firstly, correlational design is selected by the author to study on relationship between variables and interest rate. Secondly, bibliometric is selected by the author to study on two data sets, where the first one is for the purpose of content analysis and the second one is for the purpose of bibliometric analysis. Lastly, experimental computer science. Two models were selected. The first one is AdaBoost, second one is RF. AdaBoost is chosen because of higher predictive performance, and second one is chosen because of higher profit generated. And lastly, these were our references. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.